Council for the 25th of May, 2026 to order. My name is Alex Jurgensen and I will be acting mayor for today. I am joined around the table by the other members of council. To my left, on the far left, we have Councillor Tim Wake. To his right, we have Councillor Allison Morris. And just checking in on the right-hand side here, do we have Councillor Getty?
Yes.
Councillor Getty to my far right. Also joining us on Zoom is Councillor Sue Ellen Fast, as well as our Deputy CAO, Kristen Watson, to my right, and our Corporate Officer, Sophie Itzinga, to my left. We are also joined by members of our professional staff who will be here to report and answer questions. This is a forum for conducting the official business of Bowen Island Municipality, and I urge everybody to just keep this to a respectful, constructive tone, and the more we can do that, the more we can get accomplished. I would also like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, who have been stewards of this land for time immemorial. Without further ado, I would like to look to council for any amendments to the agenda, as well as to the corporate officer for any late items.
As for on-table items, today we have two letters from the public, one with regards to item 7.2, 620 Laura Road, and that's from Margaret Underhill and Brian Buckingham. And then a letter regarding item 7.3, and that's Peggy Blackwood regarding municipal parks rezoning.
Thank you.
I'll move that council approve the agenda and on-table items for the May 25, 2026 regular council meetings.
Do I have a seconder?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
And by the way, Mayor Leonard has joined us on Zoom.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Mayor Leonard is now on Zoom with us as well. Hi, Mayor Leonard. How are you?
I am great. Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen.
All right. So just to my fellow councillors, one quick note when I call for a mover or a seconder, if you could just indicate that verbally rather than raising your hand, that would be great. Same with, I will ask you to both raise your hand and say aye for the official vote count. All right. So that without further ado, we can move on to public comment.
We have 4 public commenters today. So usually that would be a 3-minute limit. Just for people who have been here before, I think all of you have, we have a new counting device. So you'll see this display light up when you start counting, and it'll count down how much time you have left. So our first public commenter this morning is Rob Purdy, and he's on Zoom actually. So Rob, you might not see the counter.
Hi, Mr. Purdy. How are you?
Good, yourself?
Fine, thank you. As usual, the counter will start whenever you are ready. Feel free to start when you're ready.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff for your time this afternoon and for the work that's gone into reviewing our rezoning application. My name is Rob Purdy, owner of 620 Laura Road and Bradley's Cidery. Since the last council meeting, Christine and I have spent time speaking directly with neighbors and listening to feedback from the community. We appreciate the constructive nature of those conversations. Our property is no longer under contract with the buyer group that initially submitted the application. We appreciate the significant amount of time, care, and thought that went into the original application and the vision behind it. Christine and I are now moving forward with this revised application ourselves. Based on the feedback we received, we have decided to significantly narrow the rezoning application. We are now simply asking for permission to continue operating the cidery substantially as it exists today, with no material expansion to the operation that has been in place for the last 5.5 years. We also want to directly address several of the concerns raised by our neighbors in our discussions. With respect to size and scale, we're comfortable limiting the tasting room and patio areas to the existing footprint, Restricting operating hours to those already permitted under the current temporary use permit is also completely acceptable to us. On the orchard and heritage trees, we understand why people care deeply about preserving them. We do too. We also appreciate Anne's thoughtful submission regarding the history and significance of the Riley Heritage Orchard. While it's difficult to guarantee how any future owner may manage a working agricultural property, we believe the cidery is one of the strongest reasons for the orchard to remain viable over the long term. We are also open to continuing these discussions and hearing other ideas regarding the long-term preservation and care of the orchard. We understand today's council decision relates primarily to process and timing. We would simply like council to be aware that as a seasonal business, we need to make practical production decisions during harvest season in early September regarding how much fruit to process for next year's sales. And we would appreciate some certainty regarding our ability to continue operating the cidery as we make these decisions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Purdy. I will look to the corporate
Yes.
officer for our next public commenter.
Yes, next we have Margaret Underhill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill.
So 6 of the neighbors closest to 620 Laura Road met with Rob Purdy by Zoom, as he's described, on May 16th at Rob's request. And during that meeting, he described his and Christine's intention regarding the cidery and the sale of the property and asked for our feedback. Over the next week, we gave much thought to our expectations for a positive outcome from the Zoom meeting and from the rezoning application. Our response to Rob included the following expectations. While we have reluctantly grown to accept the current operation, any expansion of the cidery as contemplated in the TUP conditions is unacceptable to the neighbors due to parking and noise concerns. We would insist that any rezoning bylaw state that the retail and picnic areas would be limited to their existing size, and the cidery hours would be the existing hours. As a non-negotiable condition to the rezoning acceptance, assurance in perpetuity that the heritage trees will be properly cared for by establishing a conservation covenant as discussed in the planner's report at the April 13th meeting, and as part of that covenant, establishing parameters for the necessary care for the trees. The reasons for our expectations are noise concerns. Our area is a natural amphitheater and sound travels clearly and easily. The sounds of the commercial operation, very different from residential sounds, already cause some disturbance to surrounding properties. Traffic concerns. The sunny Easter weekend caused parking mayhem on Laura Road and would have caused problems for emergency access. While the trailhead at the top of Laura Road contributes to these issues, any expansion of visits to the cidery would intensify this problem. And precedent. This has been a major change to our rural residential neighborhood. Given the other applications for rezoning in our area, we won't feel at all secure without a definitive statement from council that, if approved, this decision cannot be used as a precedent in future discussions. And as Rob noted, Rob and Christine have responded to our email and have indicated a willingness to work with us to address our concerns. We are encouraged by their response and look forward to working with all parties to make sure that these issues are addressed in the draft bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill.
Next we have Darren Jennings.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and Council and Acting Mayor, for your time today. Through the official community plan update, Bowen Island is currently engaged in a profound conversation about its future. What is emerging is not just a set of policies, it is a clear, responsible philosophy of island stewardship. One that asks us to live within our ecological limits. One that also asks us to confine our footprint to places already touched by development, and insists that when we do build, we build to accommodate the needs of the whole community, not just a select few. We believe this application advances that exact philosophy. Decades ago, Cowan Point was designated as a growth node, and significant capital investment has been made into realizing that. The roads, water, fire, and sanitary systems, the very foundations of a neighborhood, are already built and fully operational in the proposed area. Under the current zoning, these 15 acres will develop as large single-family lots. We think there is a better option. The proposed bylaw amendment application offers an alternative to that within the same footprint, a mix of more compact housing forms, a range of unit types, and neighborhoods serving commercial uses. In simple terms, we see this as a choice. A small number of large homes which are abundantly available on Bowen, or a more complete neighborhood with housing forms that are scarcely available elsewhere. When looking at these 15 acres, land that is already serviced and slated for housing, the question isn't whether we develop, but how do we do so responsibly? Acknowledging the real housing needs on Bowen, we believe the most responsible option is infill development within this existing footprint. We recognize that balancing this need for housing with the imperative to protect our environment is complex, and proposing a new approach naturally sparks discussion. Throughout the process so far in our conversations with committees, council, and the community, we have heard questions, curiosity, and healthy hesitation about aspects of this application. I want to be absolutely clear here. We welcome all of that conversation going forward. The only way to answer that with substance rather than speculation, keyword speculation, is to engage the municipality's established process. Which brings me to the decision before council today. What we are asking for is simply to advance this application to first reading, knowing that this does not in any way represent a green light for development. It is a gateway to scrutiny. It unlocks the detailed technical assessments and structured community dialogue needed to test this vision and tailor it to Bowen's future needs. We ask that you allow this application to proceed so we can begin the collaborative work of shaping this asset into something we can all be proud of. Thank you, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have during your consideration of our application and this request. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Just to clarify for the public, your application, you referenced Cowan Point, that's the Seymour Bay development?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. That was for the Seymour Bay development application, rezoning application.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have made that clear. Thank you.
Councilor Morris?
I noticed that the speaker was reading from prepared notes. Do we have a copy of those?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Next, we have Frank DeFerrier.
Right. Madame DeFerrier, good to see you.
Your worship and councillors, my name is Anne-Franc de Ferrière and I live at 1425 West Side Road. I assume that each one of you had time to read the table document, The Future of the Riley's Heritage Apple Orchard. It is a history of the Riley's Heritage Apple Orchard that is meant to inspire efforts to come up with a creative solution, one that continues the legacy of the site in the spirit of those who created this exceptional attraction. This document concludes that it is evident that the Riley's Heritage Apple Orchard needs to be preserved. Any potential solution has to take into account the legacy that led to the creation of this unique and extraordinary treasure. I am encouraging a conservation covenant. What is required is a solid business plan that prioritizes horticultural expertise to ensure a long life of the many variety of trees, potentially exceeding 1 century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it was a very interesting read.
Okay, and that is it for public comments today.
All right, moving on to delegations, we have none. So I will then turn to see what items councilors would like to pull from the consent agenda, if any.
I have two,
All right, Councilor Getty?
12.5 and 12.9, please.
12.5, 12.9, okay. And Councilor Wake or Councilor Morse?
No.
Councilor Getty's already pulled the one.
Okay, and Mayor Leonard or Councilor Fast?
They're saying no.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to adopting the consent agenda. Do I have a mover for that?
I'll move that.
All right, moved by Councilor Getty,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Wake. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried unanimously. 2.5,
Mayor Andrew Leonard, staff briefing on First Nations engagement resourcing dated May 5th, 2026.
Councillor Getty, I will turn it over to you
Okay,
and invite Mayor Leonard to speak on that if he so wishes.
all right. So the executive committee of the trust was meeting on I think it was May the 5th. I didn't look up that date. And their agenda was published about a week before, and there was a late addition to that, which was a briefing by the staff with respect to a request from the executive committee to cost out what it would take to fulfill all of the consultations that the trust was considering with respect to First Nations, both with respect to developing protocol agreements and getting their input on the policy statement. So that late item was added to the executive committee agenda, I think the day before. And there was a letter that Mayor Leonard wrote on municipal letterhead, signed by him as the mayor. And it was quite critical of the staff that had written that report, and laid out a number of concerns. Once again, this is a process that involved I suppose the internal committee meetings of the trust, and as far as I can tell, there was no contact with myself or trustee Fast with respect to any concerns about the staff report and the briefing, or that the mayor intended to write a letter to the trust. And the first I heard of this, and the first I heard about the late agenda item, because I didn't look at the agenda the night before, I'd read it the previous few days, was getting emails from the two members of the executive committee, the chair and one of the vice chairs, asking if we'd had a chance to read the mayor's letter, and subsequently asking if it was common practice for the mayor to be writing letters to other legislative organizations on the letterhead and signed by him. So my discussions that followed with Trustee Fast were with respect to the protocol agreement, and that Bowen has signed with the trust. And there's a number of comments in that protocol agreement with respect to the introductory statements, principles. 1.1 is respect of each other's jurisdiction with a commitment to promoting a spirit of mutual understanding and respect. 1.2 is a desire to foster open and direct dialogue about each other's directions or concern. 1.3 is recognition of each other's resource limitations and the benefits of working together. And 1.7 is that both parties will utilize best efforts to create a successful Islands Trust Bowen Island Municipality relationship and acknowledge there is no precedent in this regard. And I would further like to highlight 4.6. Both parties agreed to direct concerns regarding administrative requirements, resource allocation, and staffing to the respective administrative officers. I would like to repeat that when there is a matter that comes up that has interest and involves the Islands Trust, that the mayor and any other member of council has, we don't have a policy on it, but at least some sort of moral obligation to contact the elected trustees and point out that there are concerns, and if necessary, have a discussion about strategy and whether or not there should be a direct contact and a complaint to the executive committee, or whether it should go through the CAO, or what other process we're going to have. So I think this is the third or fourth time this has happened in the last 6 months, and I point out to the mayor that it's disconcerting and not helpful with respect to our relationship with the trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Before we move to a motion, is there any other discussion that we need to have on this item, or would you like to move to receive the item?
Andrew's hands up.
All right.
I see the
Mayor
mayor's hand is up.
Sorry, Mayor Leonard, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And through you, I'm happy to speak to this. I included the letter in correspondence because Councillor Fast raised it at the last meeting that she expected to see it. So here it is. Just for brief context, and I think intention is important here, the Islands Trust Executive Committee passed a resolution back in February directing staff to prepare a high-level order of magnitude cost estimate for First Nations across the trust area, which involves engagement with, my understanding now is 30 plus First Nations, funded entirely through the trust's planning-only tax base on a population smaller than Campbell Rivers. So the purpose of my read of that February meeting was that the purpose of that was to support advocacy to the province for appropriate resourcing of very important, very sensitive, and very resource-intensive reconciliation work with First Nations across the trust. And what was surprising to me was that 3 months later, trust staff responded, not on the regular agenda, which I review regularly as part of my municipal duties, but as a late addendum item posted, I think the day before a 9 a.m. meeting, effectively declining to do the work. And I reviewed it, I was concerned, and I wrote to the executive committee. And I think it's important to presence this notion around the necessity of coming to council or having these pieces approved by council in my capacity as mayor, as it was sent in my capacity as a mayor under section 116(2)A of the community charter, which gives the mayor responsibility to provide leadership on matters that, in the mayor's opinion, affect the peace, order, and good government of the municipality. The fact of the matter is Bowen is requisitioned by the trust and how the trust governs itself, including whether staff carry out the resolutions of their elected bodies, the governance implications of those decisions, and how Bowen Island taxpayers are ultimately requisitioned for that type of work directly affects our residents. So the staff report was posted as a late addendum the afternoon before 9 a.m. meeting. There was no time to consult anyone. If I'd waited for council process, the executive committee meeting would have come and gone without any external feedback from anyone on what I considered a serious governance concern. So, you know, I'm deeply committed to a constructive relationship with the Islands Trust. That's exactly why I raised this concern. And in my view, when the body declines a duly passed resolution of an elected body, that's not a healthy institutional dynamic. That's not one that serves the trust or its members in the federation well. And so flagging that concern in a way that's respectful and direct is collaboration. And staying silent when a governance problem festers isn't. You know, Chair Patrick and I have been in contact as a result of the letter. We will be meeting in Whistler next week to discuss some of these concerns. You know, and just before I close, I think, you know, I want to again make sure that we're not losing the substance here. The trust is being asked to take reconciliation engagement with 30 First Nations, 30 plus First Nations. That work is important. It's going to be expensive, potentially millions of dollars, funded by approximately 33,000 taxpayers through a planning-only requisition. The executive committee asked staff for a basic cost estimate so they could advocate to the province for appropriate funding, and staff said no. That's a disservice to two groups who deserve better. Indigenous communities deserve to know the trust is taking engagement seriously enough to plan for it financially, and our taxpayers, including Bowen residents, deserve to know the fiscal scale of what's being contemplated before commitments are made. I don't feel that's controversial. It's basic governance. So the letter is in the correspondence section for information. It represents my views as a mayor, and it states so, not an adopted council position. If colleagues would like the municipality to take a formal position on reconciliation funding by the trust, I'd welcome that in a motion. There are process concerns here, and given the elements of the community charter, given the respectful and direct tone of the letter, I believe is consistent with the protocol agreement. And if there is a motion that councillors would like to make, other than simply receiving a letter that deals with this governance and reconciliation issue, I'd welcome that motion. And that's all I'll say for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard, and I will revise my earlier statement. Is there a motion, including a motion to receive or any other motion that would like to be placed onto the floor for consideration?
I'll move that we can receive it for information.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Getty. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wake. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Carried unanimously. 12.9.
Dawn Schaefer, read disruption and emergency communication dated May 15th, 2026.
So this was the day after the emergency services had a workshop at the fire hall and talking about emergency preparations. And this is when there was the incident with the man who was standing on the edge of the one of the boats in dock and Horseshoe Bay. And while the emergency services were trying to help him, they shut down all of the other traffic so that there were no boats going in or out. And so there was a cancellation. The problem, I think, for all the commuters and the people on Bowen was that we didn't get notice of what was happening. There were some rumors and there was, a lot of speculation, but there was no way of planning. And I understand in the circumstances that there's no way for anyone to do any planning in terms of what the results would be in terms of trying to talk to this person. But there wasn't a notice from BC Ferries until I believe it was 5 hours later. And then there wasn't a notice from our system through Alertable until another, I can't remember the amount of time. There was a gap in time at any rate. And I'm just wondering if there's any follow-up with respect to, and I'm not sure if there's anybody here on staff that would be able to answer to this, but I think we need to try and follow up and tighten up, particularly how we use Alertable and what that process is so that we can get some basic information out to people and fill in some of the gaps that existed on that particular day, learn from it and use it to our advantage.
I can do
All right, to the corporate officer.
Just in response to Councillor Getty, staff have set a meeting to review that incident as well as our policy or lack thereof of the use of Alertable. So we will be discussing that this week, I believe, just to discuss that internal process for Alertable, for what types of messages are sent using Alertable and what types are not.
Good, thank you.
May I add to that?
Sure, Councillor Morse.
There's also the Emergency Program Executive Committee. I was thinking it's something we should be considering from an emergency management and just general coordination with BC Ferries when there's issues.
That is, once again, we are meeting communication staff as well as our emergency program coordinator. And there is a emergency plan where I believe those things are noted, and we do have an emergency communication plan as well in the event of a true emergency.
I'm more thinking of getting agreements with BC Ferries on specifically how they're going to communicate.
Okay, so then move to accept the letter for information or receipt it for information.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Morse. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, in that case, I will be looking to the corporate officer to introduce the next item.
The next item is under bylaws, and that's number 7.1, 620 Laura Road, application to rezone.
Did we move receipt of the consent agenda? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you,
So I'm
Planning
Daniel
Martin.
Martin, the Manager of Planning and Development, here to present this item. This is a rezoning application at 620 Laura Road. And so there on the screen is the map just of the location. It's the corner of Laura Road and West Side Road on roughly the western side of Bowen Island. By way of background, this was introduced to council April 13th council meeting. And at that meeting, council referred the application to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks Environment Climate Action Committee seeking a recommendation. And so since that time, we've had an update to the application, and the application has been amended. So we wanted to come back to council to update you on that change to the application and seek direction if there's any changes council wants to make to our referral process or our rezoning process in light of that change. So change to application, as you've heard from the public comments, would be to amend the application. So first of all, that the applicant is now the property owner registered on title. So previously it was prospective purchasers were acting as applicant. And the second is to reduce the application so that it is just seeking the cidery use. So when we introduced it in April, there was this a request for a guest house use as well, and that's no longer part of the application. So the application would be just to permit the cidery use. And what's in the proposal is to use the same definitions and restrictions as currently permitted under the temporary use permit. So in terms of just process where we are, as I said, it was introduced to council in April. We have not yet conducted the referrals to the advisory committee. So both committees, the APC and the PCAC, have both had full agendas. So we've not placed it on an agenda, but we anticipate doing that in June. So we have not yet conducted those. So this is just highlighting where we are in the application. We're in between the introduction and the referrals. And what we present in the report is essentially alternatives for council. So the applicant, in making their revised application, was seeking a way that this could be a more streamlined process given their TUP timing and the reduced scope of the application. So what we tried to lay out for council is what that could be. So what I'm showing on screen, number one, showing the current process and sort of how we view it going forward and laying out. So what you'll see there is there are essentially 7 times that we would come to council. So starting with the introduction, the results of referrals, the bylaw presented for first reading, for second reading, a public hearing, for third reading, and then for adoption. So that alternative number 2 that I show on the screen would combine the results of referrals with the bylaw presented for first reading. So that's something that we often bring as an alternative for council to consider as a way to essentially reduce the number of council meetings needed for an application. And then the third process piece that we show is that this is an alternative available for council. So for applications that comply with the official community plan that are not residential, council may choose not to hold a public hearing. So it's under the new changes to the Local Government Act, for residential rezonings that comply with the OCP, council is prohibited from holding a public hearing. But as this application is commercial in nature, it's in this option for council to hold or not hold a public hearing. And so in that case, this would see only 1, 2, 3, 4 council meetings that would need to take place. I'll note with this one too, so what this requires is that we give notice instead at bylaw for first reading. So we need the council direction to pursue this path in advance of first reading so that we can give the required notice at that stage. Okay, and then the report, as you'll see, recommends the alternative 2, that we conduct the referrals as directed by council already, and that we would then return to council with the bylaws, or with the bylaw itself, to amend the land use bylaw to allow the development that's proposed. So I'll stop there and I'll open it for any questions.
All right, so I will look to the rest of council for any questions, and I'll ask mine last.
I have a question.
Okay, Councillor Morris, Councillor Getty, then Councillor Fast.
So I'm looking at the hard copy or the report that comes up on my agenda package. And were you able to change? It doesn't show change, but the report shows that the owners of the property are Rob Purdy and Edward Porter. But it's actually Rob Purdy and Christine Hardy.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Getty.
Couple of points. I think there's great progress between the applicant and the closest neighbors. So I'm really heartened by that. Has there been any discussion with respect to the conservation covenant that was described with respect to those heritage trees in particular? That you know of? Have you had those discussions?
I've had those discussions at a high level. So that was in the introduction to the staff report. And then you saw it in the letter from the neighbors, and the applicant spoke to it just at this meeting. I think so. I'm going just back to the map of the property, and I think what was envisioned in the staff report essentially would be covenant over the creek area, and then a covenant over the orchard area.
There's 2 orchard areas. So the heritage one?
The heritage orchard area. Yeah, so our conservation development policy talks about protecting agricultural areas as one of the sort of listed things. And I think then to protect it as an area for agriculture would be, I think, in keeping with what the neighbors have requested. And so I think I would seek it from council, if that's a desire in the application, and then we would be bringing that to the applicant as like a council request as we go forward.
Okay. And looking at the timeline, so what Mr. Purdy described in terms of them needing some sort of a decision, or at least some reassurances during the harvest season in September, where does that fit in terms of the timelines that you've given in your report? So the one with or without a public hearing. I'm generally in favor of public hearing and getting as much information from the public as possible. It sounds like this one would be relatively smooth sailing, given that the bulk of the concerns that we've had in letters are from the closest neighbors. And generally, I think the larger population on the island, I can't remember any letters concern from the wider community, but if the closest neighbors have worked out most of their concerns, reluctantly or otherwise, that it's worked out, then I would still prefer to personally, I would prefer to have a public hearing just to get everything on the record. But is that including that? Does that take us well beyond this harvest window that Mr. Purdy's talking about?
I think in either of those, so if I'm looking at scenario 2 or 3, if we're looking at referrals in June, we're looking at bylaw reading in July, and then we're doing Islands Trust referral in either case, which they have 45 days to respond. So then they would be responding in August, and then that would be looking at second reading in September, assuming everything moves smoothly. So I guess it depends, what level of assurance the applicant is seeking from that. Like either way, it would get you to second reading in September. The difference being without the public hearing, you could do second and third reading in September. You could adopt it, I guess, at the following September meeting or October meeting for UBCM. Whereas with a public hearing, that wouldn't be possible. And I think to Councillor Getty, I tend to agree with you in that I tend to default to a public hearing especially one like when we wrote the report for this, we had on the record, letters of opposition from the neighbors. So we thought, okay, well, there's, in that case, we wouldn't be waiving a public hearing. Now, yeah, I guess it might be different if the neighbors now say, okay, with these points being met, they're more in favor. Maybe that would, support waiving a public hearing.
All right, so then if we gave notice that we were not going to have a public meeting, we have to give that notice at first reading. So that's the very next step.
Mhm.
And that would shorten the period with respect to the gap between, we'd still have to go to trust. And then it would go to second reading instead of a public hearing. That would be the next step after the trust.
Yes, so in either case, the next step would be the second reading. The difference being that with no
sorry,
public
right.
hearing, you could do second and third,
After
you wouldn't do a
second,
public
yep.
hearing. And yes, you have to give notice in advance of a first reading like a public hearing. So it's noticed 10 days before a first reading.
All right. So we will know roughly what is going to be in the bylaw before the first reading, so that we'll know then if there's going to be opposition and what the concerns are before we pass the notice to not have a public hearing.
Correct. And it's something I think I would have to look into and consult with the corporate officer. Like, I know that the notice has to be given if you're going to not hold a public hearing and hold a first reading. I guess what I don't know is if you hear feedback at first reading, are you still able to hold a public hearing? I'm not clear, but in terms of what's in the bylaw, like the bylaw itself is fairly straightforward. There's no guest house in terms of previous to today's letters. I would have assumed, okay, it's a zone variation that's our R3, or it's it's the zone variation and it's copying over the TUP requirements. And so I know from the letter that we received from the neighbors, they have concerns about some of the limits in the TUP, and I think the owner is fine with reducing those limits to what currently exists. So that's still fairly straightforward for those points. The bylaw itself is, is fairly straightforward.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Fast?
Thank you, Chair. I'm heartened by the progress and the and having this revised application, which simplifies the community and the owner's ability to protect the Heritage Orchard apple gene bank. And thank you for the discussion up till now. That clarifies things for sorry, I've got a cold. I've got a foggy head. If I'm missing something, please correct me. But I'm on, and this is a question for the planner, on page 4 of 5, alternatives, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we pass 3, 4, and 5 today, is that the same as your number 3 no public hearing process at the bottom of your slide?
No.
Sorry, Councillor Fast. I'm just trying to, review that question. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And I had one other question here. Oh, yes, and I just wanted to confirm. Rob Purdy in the public comments said that the cidery had been running for 5.5 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Through the chair, I'm unsure the date of when the TUP was issued. I can get that to you.
Okay, well, that's fine. If it's in that ballpark, and I'm sure the owner knows, I note in the report that there haven't been any bylaw complaints in all that time, and it seems to me that the 5 or so years of that the cidery has been running under the temporary use permit, I would be comfortable taking that into replacing the public hearing in the process, or as a sort of a test run. And with the openness that people with concerns and the owners reaching out on to have Zoom meetings and talk to each other, I think I would be comfortable in doing alternative motions 3, 4, and 5, which add up to your option 3 on your slide, because my primary goal is to protect that heritage apple gene bank. You can't grow apples from seed. It has to be from cuttings. So you need a living museum, a living seed stock. And I just think it's very important for the future of agriculture in the islands. And it's a little bit like a mini agricultural field station. And if anybody wants the Bowen Island apple trees recommended from the various testing, this is from 2010 from the Rileys, from John Riley. I have a copy. Anyway, so I'm interested, if anybody else on council is, in moving the 3, 4, and 5 so that the owners can have some certainty as to their business and their crops and the need to order apples or whatever going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Is there any other questions for the planner? Councillor Morris?
I'm just confused about moving recommendations 3, 4, and 5. Oh, okay, it's under your alternatives. I was looking at the documents inside. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Getty?
There's no mention in any of these recommendations about whether or not we should be voting on the notice to not have a public hearing. So is that going to be included in any of these?
Sure. Through the chair, just put on the screen that alternative that Councillor Fast was referring to from my report. So the third part of the motion is about providing notice of the land use bylaw at first reading.
Oh,
And so that section of the Local Government Act is about giving notice at first reading instead of holding a public hearing.
okay. Thank you.
Clarity for the public, should we put in instead of holding a public hearing? In
Sure.
that last number 5?
Okay.
Through the chair, in the notice of first reading, it would indicate that council has chosen not to hold a public hearing and is therefore giving notice of first reading. And I just looked at the legislation. I don't believe there would be anything holding council back from holding a public hearing if upon first reading, it does appear that there is
Need for one.
a need for one. Yeah. So it's a discretionary
So we can change our
clause.
minds.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Councillor Wick?
I'm prepared to make the motion.
All right. Would you like to go ahead with the motion?
I move that council refer the revised RZ 2026-0014 620 Laurel Road to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks Environment Climate Action Committee for a recommendation, and that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw to allow the development proposal in OCP RZ 2026-0014, and that council directs staff to provide notice of the land use bylaw amendment bylaw at first reading as required under section 467 of the Local Government Act.
Second.
All right. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, we're on to the next item, item 7.2 regarding Seymour Bay Landing.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just give me a sec while I start my next presentation here.
No problem. And thank you for being up again, second time in a row, Planner Martin.
Okay, so this is about a application to amend the land use bylaw and official community plan at Seymour Bay Landing. Application 2023-0297. And you've heard from the applicant already today about this application. So this is about a series of properties that are along Seymour Bay Drive, just sort of north of the Bowen Island Golf Course and of Seymour Bay Park. And so broad strokes, this application is to amend the OCP and the zoning to permit additional housing units centered around Seymour Bay Drive. So to go from 167 in the current zoning and OCP to 312. And you'll see on this plan, it shows these sort of 5 areas of different forms of residential and commercial development. And then number 6 to the west as the recreational part of the development. And so by way of background, this was introduced to you at your January 26th council meeting. And at that point, you referred this to a number of advisory committees and to Birch, the Housing Nonprofit Society. And you referred it to the OCP Steering Committee for information, and you directed staff to report back with the results of the referrals. So today I'm going to go through the results of those referrals. Advancing, okay. And I'll tell you, our advisory committees had some great discussions. They had a number of meetings for at least the APC and the Parks and Trails or Parks Environment committees had multiple meetings to discuss. They held a site visit. The applicant hosted us on site. And they gave some very thoughtful and quite longer than normal responses, I think, based on the depth of their discussion and consideration of it. So I'm not going to read all of their referrals, but I'll give you a summary at the end. And obviously the full the full responses are in the report. And so they're here on screen, but I'm going to go to the summary for each one. So the Advisory Planning Commission, if I can summarize their response, they have concern for water availability, concerns about water from Josephine Lake. They were seeking more details on affordable housing and also wanting to see development plans for the balance of the Cowan Point development. They would want to see compliance with the conservation development policy. So that's our policy that we have a goal of 50% of the land in a development is protected. They have concerns about parking and public transportation. They have a comment that's about minimizing OCP amendments in any amendment bylaw. And that I think relates to the application, which sort of provides 2 avenues for how to amend the OCP to comply with this application. So they would recommend minimizing the amendments. And then concerns for cumulative impact about development in general on Bowen Island and cumulative impact of development. The Parks Environment Climate Action Committee as well made a lengthy recommendation to council. So they went through a number of points that I will again provide a summary for you here. So summary being that Site 6 identified as recreation area, the Parks Environment Climate Action Committee recommendation is it be left as a nature park. They would want to see the 50% guidelines of the conservation development policy met in an application. They flag consideration given to climate change impacts of increased ferry or vehicle demand. They wanted to see stormwater management plan for the site and also lake capacity modeling that would include impact of potential lake drawdown. And then the Accessibility Advisory Committee met and gave as well some great recommendations. I'm going to give you the summary here and catch up. Okay. So their summary, or in summary, their recommendations related to a lot of very detailed design considerations to be made at that stage of the development. So wanting to consider access to the buildings and the public spaces, about concerns about sound impact and how building choices can impact that sound has on residents and visitors. Concern about residential building accessibility, about public space accessibility, and about public transportation to and from the site. And then we refer this to the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing, so Birch, and they responded with a letter that you'll see in the report that had 4 main recommendations. So they wanted to see They wanted the proposal to continue to refine about how it can meet the requirements of the affordable housing policy. This is a common recommendation from Birch, but looking to prescribe then a community value to the affordable housing benefit that is provided at the time of rezoning. And that's sort of based on there, and council's work in sort of trying to then evaluate, you know, a decade after the fact, what was the value ascribed to this benefit? Wanting to have some more discussion around anticipated timelines for development and phasing for it. And then seeking a Bowen first policy. So this kind of relates to phasing a bit, but some of Birch's recommendations are around making sure that Bowen residents benefit from additional housing on Bowen, and how do you phrase that so that there can be a Bowen first policy for Bowen residents? And part of that then relates as well to the phasing piece of it, saying, well, if it's phased in, it's easier to prioritize housing for Bowen residents. So just giving you the same or very similar process charts in terms of where we are. We've introduced it to council, done the initial referrals to committees. We're at this step of bringing council results or referrals. The next step in our process would be bylaws presented for first reading before it gets referred to the Islands Trust committees and information meeting. Comes back for second reading, public hearing, third reading. As this isn't a bylaw to amend the OCP, it gets sent again to the Islands Trust for approval before considered for adoption. Some next steps that I'm laying out for council here. So referrals have been completed. Additional work is needed to refine, so areas to be protected through this application. The staff report, this one in the introduction, talk about third-party review of the water studies, and so that would take place. And then drafting amendment bylaws and completion of the Islands Trust policy checklist. So when I said on my last presentation that the bylaw for the 620 Laura Road is fairly straightforward, this would be a more complicated bylaw, I think, to draft and to have in place. And then following a first reading review would include referral again to advisory committees on the bylaw themselves. It obviously includes referral to Islands Trust, and then that's where in our process we typically look for that holding of a public information meeting. And so then in the report as well, I identify alternatives. So the first alternative there that I'm sort of flagging for any OCP amendment would be directing staff not to pursue the proposal until the OCP is updated. And then the other alternatives obviously being referring back to staff for more information or to not pursue the proposal. And so then you'll see here recommendation, direct staff to prepare amendment to amend the land use bylaw and official community plan to permit the proposed development. And I'll stop presenting there and open for any questions.
Right. Thank you, Planner Martin. Looking to other councillors for any questions? Mayor Leonard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. Just in the recommendation and the alternatives, I'm curious about how staff is interpreting the feedback that it got from the committees and where that would show up in a direction to prepare bylaws that amend the existing ones. In particular, so it was referenced that the committees had made lots of great recommendations. I find the ones from the Advisory Planning Commission very compelling and congruent with what the local community appears to be asking for there, as well as additional pieces from the Parks, Environment, Climate Action Committee, Birch, and the Accessibility Committee. So I suppose what I'm looking for is if council is to accept the recommendations as drafted, or the recommendation as drafted by staff, what is the concrete interpretation of which of the recommendations of committees are we likely to see incorporated into the process and the bylaw amendments that we'd be receiving for first reading?
Yeah, to the mayor, I think that's a great question, because I do think the committee's comments, some of them get addressed, I think, at different stages in the in this process. So what, in terms of looking at the APC's responses, like I think when they look for details on affordable housing and the development plans, I think that's something we would address at first reading. So bringing back the concrete details of like, okay, this is how the housing breaks down. This is how it then meets the affordable housing policy. And I think similarly, conservation development policy and land set aside that's not, land set aside for further protection as well gets defined as we draft a bylaw. And as the bylaw map itself can draw out where protections are. And then again, feedback on OCP amendments being minimized. That's again in the sort of the bylaw drafting stage of bringing back a bylaw to show, okay, how this has been met. And then the main piece from both committees, water availability and the parks environment as well about water, I think is, the staff proposal would be to go forward with a third-party review of the water studies that have been done by the applicants' professionals.
Okay, and just a follow-up, if I may, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, so I tentatively support that. I would tend to agree with the comment to the proponent in public comments that a first reading gets the process on the ground. I understand that it will be a more involved process that requires significantly more community feedback that the local community there is asking for as well. So I believe a first reading does get the wheels on the track to start moving that along in a formal way. I would encourage staff to, or I am encouraged actually that we'll be looking at a third-party water study. I would like more information on the private utility and what that looks like over the long term for water availability, and then to see some of the incorporation of what our council committees have put forward, understanding that there may be some flex there and there may be some negotiation there, but what I would prefer to avoid is that if this comes back to us for a first reading, that staff doesn't need explicit direction from council to include some of these pieces into that. So as long as on balance that the pieces that we've heard from council committees are being incorporated, and that there is good faith engagement from the developer with the local community, and all of that comes back to us in a bit of a comprehensive way at first reading, I think that would be the ideal way to start this process.
And then to the chair, if I may, just have a follow-up to the mayor's comments.
Yes, you may.
I was just going to identify just an alternative for the mayor as well. So in terms of our recommendation, council may wish to then make a motion that leaves off the final seven words, ending essentially at the application number and just not moving the part of it that says and present the bylaws for consideration of first reading. And that alternative would mean that we would do the work of drafting the bylaws and we would bring them to council as like draft bylaws and then seeking direction to bring them back for consideration of first reading. Like if council says, okay, I want to see that further step of doing the work, but we don't actually want to move it forward to first reading, that would be an alternative for council.
Okay, thank you for that context. To me, it feels a little bit six one way, half a dozen the other, as there'll certainly be interest and discussion added throughout the process, but I'll leave it to staff's expertise and council's will to figure out what the motion will read, and we can discuss and debate from there.
All right, thank you, Mayor Leonard. Is there any questions from any other councillors?
I have
Right.
one.
Councillor Getty, Councillor Wake, then Councillor Fast,
And Councillor Morse.
and Councillor Morse.
So the recommendation from the APC was that removing OCP policies to accommodate localized development is not supported. And when I looked at the proposal with respect to what was being proposed, and it's page 15 of 87 in our agenda, Principle 3, notwithstanding the potential to adjust the distribution and location of dwelling units on the island, the overall number of primary dwelling units anticipated in the 96 OCP will remain the same. Recommendation is to remove that. My understanding is that that number from 96 was the baseline in terms of basic resources that are on the island, both physical and social. And that was the number that all the resources on the island could support. So the recommendation from the proponent is to remove that. And there's an option A and B with respect to removing the reallocation of density. But it seems to me that the number is that's proposed in both the original application. I think there's a slight increase with this this proposal is to basically set up a second village, 300 units down in Seymour Bay, which is the equivalent or bigger than Snug Cove. And with all of the amenities and support services, and there's some infrastructure that's in place, but everybody's got lots of questions about the water and the parking and the transportation. So if this were allowed to go through as the proponents are suggesting, then what does that do to the 96 number, 1996? Seems to me it blows it out of the water.
My recollection of the numbers is the number would have to be increased. So I don't know, I guess, yeah, is that there would have to be amendments. So I took that APC comment to mean they would not be in favor of removing it. But I guess it would be, yeah, tweaking somehow. I mean, I will say, I think that number as well, and having a specific number of that kind is not consistent with the changes to the Local Government Act and specifically the requirements for housing need report, and that the OCP show 20 years of housing within an OCP. So when we did the analysis based on our current housing needs report, that showed we needed 1,394 units of housing within Bowen's OCP, additional housing units potential. We showed that it did have that number within it. We're required to update it in 2028, and it's highly possible that, you know, at that point, if we had our current OCP that just carried forward, we would not, and we would have to amend our OCP to include additional housing units. So the province's changes essentially mean that that OCPs cannot just have a finite number of housing units within it, that it's not possible for communities to say, we want our size to be X, and that's what it's going to be, and then we'll stop. That's no longer essentially an option for municipalities.
If I may follow up? If I may?
Yes.
So the housing needs study that we did showed that we were well within, with the zoning that had been put into place with all of the other developments that haven't been built yet, that we were well within what the province was requiring in terms of a housing needs assessment. Right? And you just said that we might have to revise that as early as 28. But at this point in time, we don't.
Yeah, through the chair, I would say that we are within. I don't think I would say we're well within.
Yeah. All right. And sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Would you like me to come back to you at the end?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Wake?
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to try to simplify what we've just heard here because it's quite complicated. But my sense, and building on what Mr. Jennings suggested, I understand what we're doing here is approving an amendment to bylaws, which will be brought to first reading. And once given first reading, we will then move on to sorting out a lot of the details that we're talking about here. But we're not at first reading. We wouldn't necessarily be committed to everything that was asked for.
Through the chair, yes, I think that's broadly correct. I would say that between now and first reading, it's for the staff and the applicant to work out many of those details and present them to council. So not that you would have first reading and then dive into more details. It's like between now and then, we would bring more information and more details for you.
Okay, and a follow-up. So the notion that we need to get first reading before the applicant can then go ahead and do a whole bunch of studies, and we can do studies. That would tell me that not everything is going to
Yes.
be.
Correct. Yes, not everything. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions for staff. One of them relates to the draft updated OCP, which the proponent spoke to at the beginning of his public comments, and I'm wondering, do we have, because I know our current OCP is clear about it, the vision for the community for the island being one village, and I'm wondering when, I know we're just entering another public input period. When do we expect that the OCP might be finished? Is that still sometime this fall, or could it be? What's your guess?
Through the chair, I typically don't like guessing on camera, but I'll say that our round 2 engagement is open until June 22nd. And we would then look to come back to council, I guess, aiming for the end of July with a report on like what we heard, what was our feedback on that draft OCP, and what changes we're making in response to that feedback.
Okay, thank you. So that sounds fairly imminent to me. I'm having been involved in the OCP over the current OCP, and over many years, I'm just conscious that it is, to me, it's like the Constitution, and I don't see making big changes until we've got a final version. My second question is about the letter from the South Bowen Association, Community Association process request. I remember way back that South Bowen Community Association had a lot of input in, and I don't know how formal it was or anything, but they seem to be asking about a formal role. Nowadays, is there a formal role for a community association in a rezoning and OCP process like this, or is it part of the general public process?
Through the chair, I would say that's not typical. I mean, I think I would need council direction if you want that to take place. I'm happy to be part of meetings with the association to meet with them about the application. I'm happy to, facilitate meetings between them and the applicant. Like more typical, I think, is what we've seen with the other application today for Laura Road, where, clearly the applicant has met with the owners. The owners have sent a letter to council saying this is what we would like to see in the application. And obviously, neighbors would be invited to any public information meeting, invited to provide comment, as would the general public. Yeah, I mean, I saw the letter on the agenda and I was trying to think through, I haven't been part of any applications here where we've had that sort of formal, I don't know what it would be, formal advisory board or formal setup with a community association and the applicant.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted that clarification, because it was different back in the days when the Seymour, when the whole Cowan Point process was happening. I believe we weren't a municipality during parts of that. So it was a different time. Okay. Thank you. I'm more interested in, oh no, I have another comment. I'll come back later, or would you like me to continue, Chair?
I will continue with the first round speakers if that's okay with you, Councillor Fast. And I'll come back.
Sure.
Okay. Councillor Morris?
Okay. I'm definitely not in favor of giving a bylaw first reading at this point. The concept of presenting a draft bylaw would be more palatable to me. And the other issue of where growth will occur is an issue that's being considered as part of the OCP update. And so allowing all this additional growth, I'm thinking, is not appropriate before the OCP's been updated. And then a few other comments. There's been no real public information meeting on this proposal, specifically at the site where there's been the different areas marked out or anything. So it's very hard for the community to have any concept necessarily of just what's involved other than looking at pretty pictures. And then another question is timeline for building the proposed units and buildings and who's going to be building them. At this point, there's still a lot of undeveloped lots that haven't been built on, haven't been sold, and blocks. So, you know, what happens to all of those? And we've deferred other OCP amendments requests, like the one for West Side Road, which meets a housing need, till after the OCP. So what makes this one different? And there's lots that are being shown as pending subdivision. Have they actually been subdivided, and are they going to be able to be built on? And then the other major question, which everybody's asking, is there's still no water report that clearly states there's enough water in the lake to service the other blocks that are not developed as of yet, or the undeveloped lots in the Cowan Point CD, as well as water for the other license holders on the lake and the creek. There's no definitive report that says there's enough water for all of that. And the water report relies on 2010 reports, and much has changed since then with respect to climate change and drier summers. So I think all those things need to be explored before going further, and definitely some sort of on-site community information meeting prior to anything.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Getty, did your train resume
you.
its tracks?
Yes. So I think Councillor Morris might have just answered it. So there was a referral of the application to the OCP, and was there discussion there in terms of including or waiting with respect to these increases?
Through the chair, this application was referred to the OCP steering committee for information. So like with all the referrals that were done for information, it was included on a meeting agenda, but not discussed in detail and not, you know, advanced to recommendation. And I will say the draft OCP, as a rule for the 3 comprehensive development areas we have in the current OCP, so Grafton Lake, Arbutus Ridge, and the Cowan Point, essentially proposes no changes to those overall, that they sort of viewed those as you know, development proposals that were negotiated with council and enshrined as a comprehensive development area in the OCP. Those are essentially left untouched.
Thank you.
Councillor Fast?
Thank you, Chair. I also am comparing this in my mind with the motion that we made about West Side Village. There's questions about water and availability and water and stormwater runoff and what effect it will have on the Seymour Bay Public Beach, and my big question is, what will the OCP stay? We don't know that yet. It's still in process. So I'm in favor of alternative number 1, that we not pursue this proposal any further until the OCP is updated. The official community plan speaks to things like how many villages on Bowen, how will water be remain healthy in a climate changing climate, not only water in to homes, but water that flows over the surface properties. I'm particularly concerned about, you know, outdoor use of water, even if it's gray, and maybe particularly if it's gray water, and that water all going down the slope to be coming out on and wetting Seymour Bay Beach, which is supposed to be a community amenity from the first phases of the project. And now there's the stormwater runs down there, which I don't think was ever intended. I like the idea of having clear characteristics or conditions that a development has to meet before they can increase the uses and density on it. And I'm not convinced that this one has had that yet. Maybe at some point we need to think about a development permit that lays out the conditions so that everybody's clear going forward. And 30 years from now, when something comes up, we can say, "Oh yeah, did that." But I'm in favor of alternative number one. Excuse me for rambling. I'm not very clear-headed here. To not pursue the proposal until any further until the official community plan is updated. That's my interest.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Is there any other speakers that would like to ask questions?
I just got one.
Councillor Morris.
I'm just looking at the cover letter that we got and under council's consideration, the implication of the way that's written, where we've voted to require an amendment to the official community plan, implies that our requiring an amendment to the plan was endorsing the plan. And I don't think that was. All we were saying is if you want to do this, you've got to amend the community plan.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Any final piece of discussion?
I'll put a motion on the floor.
All right, Councillor Getty, you're up for a motion onto the floor.
All right, I move that council direct staff to not pursue the proposal OCP RZ 2025-0079 any further until the official community plan is updated.
All right, is there a seconder?
Second.
Oh, Councillor Morris beat you to the punch there, Councillor Fast. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'd like to proceed to the question. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
All
You have to vote.
correct, and I vote in favor. Aye. Sorry, I used to think for chairs don't vote. Thank you, Councillor Morris. So that passes with Mayor Leonard and Councillor Wake in opposition. And if I could call on, thank you very much, Mr. Martin, for your time. And if I could call on the corporate officer for the next item.
Yes. Sorry, 7.3 zoning amendments for municipal parks, Xerxes Au Planner 1.
Hello, Community Planner Au.
Oh.
Hi, here to use rezoning bylaw number 721, first reading. Just for background, Council's strategic plan has a goal of land conservation, and one of the actions that council actions that council has sought as to achieve this goal through amending the land use designations to parks for municipal parks. It was at the February 4th, 2026 PCAC meeting that the community brought a list of parks to be rezoned to park zones. And it was at the April council meeting that the draft zoning bylaw was introduced. Currently, these parks proposed for rezoning are zoned either comprehensive development, rural residential, or settlement residential. The parks will be zoned to either passive park P1, multi-use activity park P2, or natural park P4. The proposed park zones were chosen for alignment with the 2018 Parks Plan as well as current uses.
If I may ask Community Planner Au, is there not a P3 that is being suggested for any of these parks, or is P3 being skipped for the purposes of this particular?
None of these parks are being proposed as P3. There is a P3 park zone. None of the parks are being proposed as that zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So in the slide, it has an excerpt from the land use bylaw that shows the permitting uses of each of the park zones. P2 is the most permissive park zone, and P4 is the most restrictive, with P1 being the second most restrictive park zone. Staff have received over 15 letters in response to the proposed parks rezoning bylaw. Most of these letters discuss concerns with the proposed rezoning of Aaron Sluggett Field, Evergreen Park, and the Evergreen Unnamed Park. So the public feedback was received from residents concerned about the rezoning to multi-use activity park. Staff have not suggested any change to the proposed P2 rezoning. The P2 zoning was chosen as it best reflects current uses as well as its 2018 Parks Plan description. Public feedback was also received from nearby residents of Evergreen Park, concerns about its rezoning to a passive park. Likewise, staff have not made any changes to the draft zoning bylaw in response to this feedback. And lastly, feedback has also been received about the unnamed Evergreen Unnamed Park. Residents were concerned about rezoning to neighborhood park as proposed during the bylaw introduction. Staff have changed the draft zoning bylaw so that the park will be rezoned as natural park P4. And just a quick reminder on so Aaron Sluggett Field is currently proposed to be zoned as P2 community park. Buchanan Park is currently zoned comprehensive development and will be also P2. Davies Park is proposed to be P4 natural park. Evergreen P1 as a passive park. Headwaters Park P4 natural park. Hunter Park also P4. King Edward Bay Park to be a multi-use activity park. Malkin Creek passive park P1. Mike's Lorg P4. Seymour Bay P1 passive park. Number 27 undeveloped and inaccessible as described in the Parks Plan. This will be a natural park P4. Similar P31 undeveloped and inaccessible will be natural park. Art Res and Nature Park, it's proposed to be P1. And Arbutus Ridge Unnamed Park, another P4. Arbutus Ridge Unnamed Park, this is also a P4. And as described earlier, Evergreen Unnamed Park, this is proposed to be P4 Natural Park. And 1680 Joan Audrey Lane, this is proposed to be zoned as a multi-use activity park. Likewise with Westside Playscape, it's also proposed to be a multi-use activity park. And lot 2, currently split zone of the northern part zoned as E1, and this was proposed to be zoned as a multi-use activity park. So the recommendation for you is that the bylaw number 721/2026 be read a first time, and that the bylaw be referred to the Islands Trust, and that staff report back with the results of the referral. And I'll stop there and look for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Committee Planner Au. Is there any questions from the rest of council?
I have one.
Okay, we'll go Councillor Morris, Councillor Wake, Councillor Fast.
I'm still not quite understanding what's happening with Aaron Sluggett Field. My understanding from all the comments we've heard, people don't want it to be P2. Am I reading the comments correctly?
Through the chair, yes, you're reading comments correctly.
But you're going to leave it as P2, if I understood your comments?
Through the chair, yes.
So I guess my question is, why are you leaving it as P2, given all the input from the community around it? It sort of like, sounds like a little bit more like they want it to be a neighborhood park. Or
Natural park.
or a natural park, but
Through the chair, staff decided is that Aaron Sluggett Field stay as a P2, as it best reflects the current uses as an open field, and yeah.
Community Planner Au, you referenced during your presentation that, oh wow. Okay, sorry. You referenced during your presentation that it reflects the current uses of Aaron Sluggett Field as well as the proposed parks plan from 2018. And I was wondering if you could share with us which parts are which are from Aaron Sluggett Field's current use and which are from the proposed 2018 plan.
Sorry, Chair, could you just ask your question again?
Sure, no problem. So I was just wondering if you could share with us, earlier you had alluded that it was kept as P2 because it would reflect the current use of Aaron Sluggett Field as well as the plan for it as laid out in the plan, the 2018 Parks Plan. I was wondering if you could highlight to us which of the justifications are because of the current use and which of the justifications for keeping it P2 are from the Parks Plan.
Yes, so Aaron Sluggett Field is currently being used as both like an open field and as a athletic park as defined in our land use bylaw. In our parks plan, there's a wide variety of uses as a park that off the top of my head I can't remember.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna refer here to the manager planning.
Just to add to what our planner one was saying, so the parks plan has a classification as community park. That's the sort of highest use, and there's 4 parks that are recommended for that classification. So it's Aaron Sluggett Field, the bike park, which is behind Vix, Quarry Park, and Veterans Park. So one of the 4 that have that community park designation that would be essentially the equivalent of the P2. So it's as our planner has said, it's the combination of both. It's existing use as an athletic field, and it's proposal in the parks plan to be a community park. So that to the P2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Councillor Wake.
Thank you, through the chair. Following up on Councillor Morse's comments, it seems very clear to me here that there are 3 parks that are raising the controversy here. Aaron Sluggett Field, Evergreen Unnamed Park, and Evergreen Park. And the letters we have received are all from immediate neighbors of those parks. And they feel very strongly that those should all be natural parks, P4, which you have done with Evergreen Unnamed Park. But I don't see any indication in those letters that they, as the immediate neighbors and users, want to see them be either P2 or P1. They want them to be P4. And they're the people that are most affected. They have, we haven't heard from anyone on the rest of the island that says, well, we have to have more uses in Aaron Sluggett Field. So I would strongly suggest that we make Aaron Sluggett Field and Evergreen Park P4.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Would there be any uses currently of Aaron Sluggett Field that would need to cease in order for it to be moved to P4, or could that be done pretty easily?
Through the chair, there's the current open field uses, as well as any athletic park uses that would be affected if Aaron Sluggett Field was rezoned as P4, which they showed in the table is the most restrictive allowable use, has the most restrictive allowable uses for if it was to rezone to be P4 zoning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because yeah, Councillor Fast.
Thank you. That question is one that I have about Aaron Sluggett Field. And I've been involved in this process throughout, and I've been working towards getting parks zoned as parks since 2007, according to my notes, because I think it leaves them all better protected. But in this case, Aaron Sluggett Field, my question is, does it require currently any mowing or any maintenance to keep it as an open field? Because by moving it to P4, it seems that would be nature protection. Is the community assuming that we're going to plant it with native plants, or nature protection is the only use? It wouldn't have anything to do with play fields or outdoor assembly like a wedding or a little playground at some point in the future. Is Aaron Sluggett, can anybody tell me, is Aaron Sluggett get any mowing or maintenance for an open field now?
Through chair, it's my understanding that, yeah, Aaron Sluggett Field does is maintained with mowing to maintain its open field.
Thank you. Then it seems to me that a mowed field doesn't really qualify as nature protection, and I wonder which, and I have totally respect for the people who live nearby and care about nature protection. I think that's fantastic. I just wonder if P1, the passive park with uses including, with uses that P4 nature park doesn't have, passive park can allow open space, outdoor assembly, play fields, and all of them allow nature protection, of course. So that wouldn't be excluded. It would just allow the municipality to keep the field open. It seems to me, am I on the right track there?
Sorry, just to see if I'm parsing this out correctly, Councillor Fast, you're proposing rather than it being remaining as P2 or moving to P4 as many of the surrounding neighbors wish, compromising it at P1, which is in between.
That's a suggestion, yeah. I just don't see how it can be a nature park and be mowed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would concur with that suggestion. P1.
Is there any other questions for the planner?
Please.
Councillor Getty?
Okay, so I'm asked Community Planner Al for the definitions, because I'd completely forgotten them, and he sent me the chart from the land use plan, which was very handy. So the difference between P1 and P2, so that's the passive park and the multi-use. And I'm in line with what Councillor Fast is saying, is that P2, they both have open space, they both have an interpretive information center. P2 also has athletic park and whatever facilities there would be in line with that, and hard surface courts. They both have outdoor assembly, they both have play fields. P2 has playgrounds and other outdoor recreational facilities. And then they're all the same in terms of nature protection and trails and buildings and structures accessory to permitted uses, interpretive signs, parking areas, and shelters. So it seems to me what the community is asking for is not necessarily the nature park, which does not have the open space, does have an interpretive center, and does not have athletic facilities, doesn't have hard surface, doesn't have outdoor assembly, does not have play fields or playgrounds. So I think P4 is highly restricted in terms of left to nature and whatever, I suppose, wildflowers might be growing, and that's about it. And P1 is pretty well open to the community. It's not necessarily the neighborhood, but it is, it's the least invasive, or it's less invasive than the P2. And it seems to me that that is what the neighbors who are closest to it and most likely to use it are going to be asking for. If I remember correctly, the discussions around having Aaron Sluggett be more I'm not sure what the word is, intense, was that there wasn't any hard surface playgrounds and areas on the west side. And so it was like, we later brought in the west side playground, having something available and zoned in Aaron Sluggett Field was the one that got that zoning. So if what the closest neighbors are talking about, they're the ones that might use a hard surface and other playground equipment. And if they're saying that they'd rather have it less, then I think that we could easily accede to that without losing a great deal. So I think I'm agreeing with changing it from P2 to P1 for Aaron Sluggett. I'm in agreement with all the other changes.
Councillor Morris?
Well, I think P1 would fit better than P2 from everything that I was reading from the neighbors, that they can still, go and kick a ball around with the kids and sit on the grass and stuff like that, but not have any of the other development stuff that's hard surface and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Is there Councillor Wake?
Thanks. Just following up on this whole discussion, I was responding to the letter from Andrea Baston, which says in part, P2 zoning. Well, let me read the paragraph before. I'm opposed to the premise underlying this rezoning more broadly, which for me is likely the most compelling part of this discussion. Parks do not need infrastructure to justify their existence. A park is a green space meant for thinking, pausing, for being outside without a program or a scoreboard. In an increasingly online world, the instinct should be not to convert every remaining green space into a utilization metric. It should be to protect the ones we have. P2 zoning would permanently open Aaron Sluggett Field to uses that are incompatible with its character, its terrain, its history, and the community that surrounds it. Once that zoning is placed, future development proposals on this land could proceed without meaningful community output. This is not a hypothetical risk. That's how zoning works. I'm asking council to designate Aaron Sluggett Field as P4 Natural Park Zone. So now we've had a further discussion. She hasn't mentioned P1, and I would agree. P1 is, I think, is going to provide the protection that she's asking for. And she's obviously passionately connected to this park. So I'll change my previous recommendation that that we change Aaron Sluggett Field to P1, but we also change Evergreen Park to P4 for all the reasons, all the accompanying letters.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Just to share some of my own thoughts in reading a lot of the letters that came in, it was pretty clear to me that there's a lot of folks who are pretty passionate about it. And that giving it a higher affordance of either, P4 in the case of the two Evergreen Parks or P1 in the case of Aaron Sluggett Field really could go a long way towards addressing a lot of those concerns. So I would support that recommendation as well. Thank you, Planner Au, for your report and bringing the bylaw forward. Really appreciate it. Is there
Question on
somebody?
process?
Sorry?
A question on process.
Councilor Morris.
So at this point, we have a draft bylaw to amend. So do we want to proceed, but in which case we're going to need to move motions to amend sections of that bylaw? Or do we want to be simpler and ask Planner Au to come back to the next council meeting with the revised bylaw based on today's discussions?
I'm happy to entertain either. Is there something that you would suggest, Councilor Morris, based on your experience with these matters in the past?
I'm looking at Planner Martin or Planner Au. It would be simpler to bring it back, and there's no real time pressures, is there?
I mean, through the chair, I think the motion suggested by Councilor Wake is fairly straightforward. So the bylaw itself names the parks and names different zoning. So I think we just look for the motion that Councilor Wake could make would just be that council amend bylaw number 721 to rezone Aaron Sluggett Park to be P1 passive park and Evergreen Park to be P4 natural park. And then you could proceed with the recommendation and you read it first time as amended.
Thank you, Planner Martin. Councilor Wake, I will look to you for that recommendation if you'd like to put on the floor.
I'm happy to make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Point of privilege, Chair.
Granted.
I was unable to hear the planner's response. So I'm unclear on what the motion on the floor is.
Okay, Councilor Wake, could I get you to read the motion?
I'm happy to do it.
Or, okay, I'll look to the corporate officer in this case.
It's that council amend bylaw number 721 to rezone Aaron Sluggett Park to be P1 passive park and Evergreen Park to be P4 natural park.
And in the context to that from Planner Martin's comment was that we could use this motion to then get to a amended first reading passed today. Is that correct, Planner Martin?
That's correct. Typically, we'd look for that first amendment motion to be adopted and then look for subsequent motion.
Okay.
So I'll second the motion to amend.
Councilor Morris has already seconded. That's okay. Mayor Leonard, does that satisfy the context that you needed?
Yes, Chair, thank you so much, and my appreciation to you and staff.
Okay, in that case, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously.
I'll move the motion.
Now we need to do,
Okay, Councillor Getty, if you'd like to go ahead and move the next motion.
I move that bylaw number 721/2026 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 721/2026, as amended, be read a first time.
Okay, do I have?
Continue the
Uh,
referral?
Yes, please.
Okay, and that further that council refer bylaw 721/2026 as amended in the attached Islands Trust Policy Statement checklist to the Islands Trust, and staff report back with the results of the referral.
Second.
Seconded by, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Morris. Is there any other discussion on this motion?
Don't.
Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Chair and Council.
Thank you very much, Planner Out, and Planner Martin as well. Thank you. And I will look to the corporate officer for the next item on the agenda.
Next, we have item 8.1, that's Tunstall Bay Beach and Boat Launch Rehabilitation Project. Carla Skuse, Manager of Environment and Parks Planning.
Manager Skuse.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. If you will just give me a second to share my screen here. Sorry, I'm a little slow. Don't do this very
That's
often.
okay.
Okay, so through the chair, the Adaptation and Action Grant Program funds feasibility studies for climate adaptation projects with expected implementation costs of up to $1 million. When FCM staff brought this to our staff's attention, we looked at a lot of different projects, but we identified Tunstall Bay as the best fit for this grant opportunity. The erosion issues at the beach, for the beach access specifically, have been on my radar for years. And we've explored a lot of different options for resolving those erosion issues, but have been unable to implement them mainly due to budget constraints. So this grant allows us to move forward with those and to expand the scope to include the boat launch, which was contemplated from about 2009 to 2014. Climate risks like sea level rise and storm surge are directly tied to emergency preparedness. And we now understand that, and we understand that if Grafton Road ever became compromised during a wildfire or a major storm, marine access would become quite essential. So it made sense to treat the beach and the boat launch as a single system, and then to use that grant funding to do both at once. So we've been approved for the feasibility study stream, which also covers detailed design work. It's a 90% funding share, and staff time is eligible. So our cash contribution would be only $5,740. Once the design is complete, we can apply for up to $1 million in implementation funding through that same program. And we could qualify for funding bonuses of 10% each for an Indigenous partnership, for rural community status, if we address equity in a meaningful way, and for nature positive approaches. So that's up to 100% funding. For all my next slides, I'm going to present a series of photos, just trying to show you a bit more of a rationale for the project. And rather than describe each one of the photos individually, I'll just let you know that they're all basically the same kind of things. So they're photos of the beach access at Tunstall Bay, and mostly taken from the beach, either from the north and south side. So these ones are from 2008, and they're a little bit hard to see, but you can see that the sediment is at a much higher level than it currently is, and it's actually a lot closer to the water line as well. It will become more apparent in the photos coming up. It is, beaches are really dynamic environments, and that can be seen by anyone who visits this beach in the winter, that the stream moves around the beach and it'll be in a different spot every winter. But we're trying to show like the long-term trends of what's been happening here. So by 2010, when these photos were taken, the erosion was clearly becoming an issue. And this is around the same time that the boat launch rehabilitation was coming together. DFO issued the authorizations for the upgrades in 2011. So you can notice the position also of the vault toilet building in this photo. And can you see that? Yeah. So the trail comes up here to the left of the cedar trees instead of to the right where it was eventually moved a couple of years later. The Bowen Island Fish and Wildlife Club undertook that volunteer restoration work. And moving the trail was to protect the roots of those large cedar trees. So in 2015, you can see here that they had installed a large riprap along the bottom there, and then with the log on top and a lot of fill materials, which I think was mainly to create space for the yacht club's boat racks for their sailing camps rather. And they also delivered quite a few improvements, habitat enhancements to the salmon habitat in Explosives Creek. And I think those were really great and long lasting, but for this particular part of the project, you can see that from the photo on the right, that's from February 2016. And already the storm surge is reaching all the way up to that riprap line. In 2016, you can see already where that the line here, so this is already eroded all the way back to the boat ramp, to the boat rack. So like all along here. And this illustrates a well-documented issue with hardened shorelines, and it's something that we try to discourage through our participation in the Green Shores program. But basically, when the waves hit a really hard surface, they hit with a lot of force, and all the water comes up into the air and then comes back down with that same force. And it often causes a lot of erosion behind that barrier because it's coming up and then straight down. So with a nature-based approach, what we're trying to do is dissipate that energy so that it doesn't hit something with such a hard force.
If I can interrupt, for your purposes, Alex, the erosion is in the first 5 years was about a foot high and maybe 3 feet back, and now it looks like it's about 3 feet high and about 6 feet back in behind all the huge rocks that were put in the riprap. So it's considerable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Getty.
These two photos are from 2018, and they show a little bit more of the erosion, but we also tried a smaller scale intervention here where we extended the split rail fence to keep people off of that part of the beach. And then we did a small planting with some leftover grant funds we had for another project. The plants didn't establish, and by this point, the riprap that had been installed earlier had all dispersed on its own. So that was just gone.
It's washed out by the ocean.
Washed out by wave action. So I think this really reinforced for us that the piecemeal, non-engineered solutions were not going to solve this problem, and that we needed a really comprehensive and properly designed approach. These photos are from 2022. The winter storms in 2021 caused really significant damage, and we developed a conceptual shoreline restoration design, and that included beach nourishment. It was developed in 2022. So we budgeted $15,000 to continue that project in 2023. And, you know, potentially start the improvements, or at least do a detailed design and start the permitting process. But the engineers told us at that point that the beach nourishment project would cost closer to $150,000 and take years to implement because of the permitting, and, you know, we didn't have the design really completed yet either. And because of Tunstall Beach is status as a community beach, and because it's supposed to be one of our more accessible beaches, we made the decision to go ahead and put in a concrete ramp. And you know, a lot of that was because there was many complaints. It was really dangerous, and it was an interim safety measure. And from then on, I mean, we were always kind of keeping our eye out for further grant opportunities to try and implement these projects that we had been exploring. So that brings us to 2026, and even today, the problem is clearly worsening. In the past, it was a bit more difficult to justify this larger expenditure when we were talking only about restoration or recreation access. But this grant funding obviously changes things, and it gives us an opportunity to develop long-term and integrated solutions, looking at the beach access and the boat launch together as one system, and determine the best approach to climate resilience. And so that's why we've included the boat launch in the project, you know, just to provide further support. Our emergency management plan identifies marine evacuation as a likely scenario during major hazards. And the municipal launch at Tunstall is in disrepair, and it's unusable at low tides. So rehabilitating that launch to an all-tide climate resilient standard gives us a reliable secondary access point for evacuations, for emergency response, and for critical supply delivery, particularly for residents on the west side who could otherwise be cut off. So this grant application identified emergency preparedness as the one of the core justifications for approving the grant, alongside the ecological and community access benefits. So the recommendation is asking council approvals to proceed with the detailed design work, to approve the enter into the funding agreement with FCM to receive up to $70,000, and to approve the municipal contribution of $5,740. I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, Manager Skoos. If I could ask to see if there's any questions from council. Okay, I will start with Councillor Getty and then followed by Councillor Wake.
On page 406 of your report, you mentioned that the project area is within 200 meters of a known archaeological site of First Nation significance. So has, I'm assuming that's Squamish Nation, have they been contacted in terms of the proposal, in terms of doing work in the area?
Through the chair, no, we have not contacted them yet. We do plan on consulting with them early and often. A couple things I can say about that are that there are exemptions often when you're not excavating for more than about 90 centimeters. And there isn't a lot of excavation planned with this project. It's more about the addition of materials. So we really hope to not have to actually disturb any archaeological sites. Another thing that I would like to say about that is that the implementation project funding will give us an additional 10% if we partner with an Indigenous community. I have followed up with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and they told me that if the Squamish Nation partners with us, we would still be the lead applicant. And so it wouldn't count towards their project limit, which is an important thing because everybody only gets one project. So it would be in our best interest to make sure that the Squamish Nation is quite happy. And if they want to partner with us, then it would be a big advantage and would potentially give us an extra $100,000 to complete any studies that they would request or want us to do.
I think the good neighbor policy is just that we're in the area, we know that there's something there that's significant and that we're not going to be disturbing it, but you know, this is what we're doing. So that they're on notice,
Mhm.
that would be polite.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Councillor Wake?
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Goose. This is a, that was an extensive report. That was quite a read of history. And great work getting the FCM opportunity. And I hope this goes through well. And then I hope we can do the same thing again for the composting facility. But anyway, I'm not making jokes about it. Anyway, I just think this is great, and I'm happy to make the recommendation when the time comes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wake. Mayor Leonard?
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking to move the recommendation as written.
Okay, could I get the corporate officer to please read the recommendation as written?
That council approves staff proceeding with detailed design work for the Tunstall Bay Beach and Boat Launch Rehabilitation Project. That council authorize staff to enter into a funding agreement with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to receive up to $70,000 through the Adaptation and Action Grant Program. And that council approve a municipal contribution of $5,740 to support the grant funded work.
Second.
All right, moved by Mayor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Wake. Is there any other discussion on this motion before we move to the
Just a
question?
quick question, have we got room in the budget
To Councillor Getty?
to the acting CAO?
Yes, this is something that came up after the budget was approved. We got a final notification that we're approved for it. So we can certainly continue our work on this project, and at the end, when we've completed it and we know what the final municipal expenditure was, something in the neighborhood of 5,740, I'll do the budget amendment with the actual amount in it at that time that's required. It's really just a housekeeping piece, and it can be done after the fact. We can get going on this project.
Good.
All right, Councillor Wake?
To add to that, I understand there's a GST refund within that too, so it's actually less than that.
Okay, hearing no further questions, I will proceed to the question. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. I will look to the, thank you very much, Manager Scoos, for your report. Really appreciate it. And I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of the next item.
Next, we have 8.2 Roadmap for the Public Works Service Yard Upgrade Project. Sarah Quasari, Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, Director Kasari.
I'm wondering if everyone can see my screen. Okay.
I must admit I cannot, but that's nothing different from any other meeting, so please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to present today. I really appreciate this. This afternoon, I'm bringing forward one of the most important capital investment that municipality of Bowen Island will make in the coming years, the upgrade of our public works service yard. This is a $6 million project, and we are going to deliver this project through the progressive design build delivery model. and we need to go through the alternative approval process to secure the necessary borrowing authority from our electorates. I will walk council through the roadmap today, where we are, how we get there, and what decisions we are asking council to make along the way. Before I get to the process, I want to council to see what we are working with today. You can see these photos are taken by myself from the municipality works yard. This is our current public works service yard. As you can see, we have a 0 purpose-built covered equipment base. Our main operations building is approximately 30 years old, and it is not adequate for the functions we ask of it. We are using shipping containers, as you can see in there, as in the storage, and equipment sits exposed to the elements. The $6 million investment we are presenting today is not discretionary. It is the cost of giving our public works team the facility they need to serve the community safely and effectively. Why we need to make this investment? As I mentioned, there is no proper equipment storage at the current facility that we have. Makeshift storage, we are relying on repurposed shipping containers and improvised lean tows. There aren't secure and these are not efficient and not appropriate for a municipality operation facility. Cluttered and unsafe yard conditions. There is no organized layout, no designated traffic flow, and no clear safety zoning. This is a work-safe liability. We do have that infrastructure there. It's 30 years old. The main building has no adequate workshop, no proper staff facilities, and no fleet maintenance space. Staff are doing their best with what is there, but it is not enough. This is the baseline we are starting from, and it makes the case for the urgency. I would like to go through the project background. This project has been in motion for several years now. I wanted to council to understand the history because it shapes every decision we are recommending today. In 2021-22, Kaizen architecture was engaged and design progressed to approximately 50% completion with Class C cost estimates. The project was placed on hold in early 2022 due to the budget pressure from other failing infrastructure. In January 2023, council elected not to proceed with the remainder of the Kaizen's design bid build contract. In April 2024, Liberty Contract Management was engaged for approximately $27,000 to deliver a fixed price design build proposal. In late 2024, council elected not to proceed with that proposal either. That brought us to a project reset. I wanted to be transparent with council. 2 prior recommendations were declined. We have learned from that. The approach we are presenting today is progressive design build when an independent owner's representative is specifically designed to give council cost certainty, transparency, and control at every stage before committing to construction dollar. I understand this part is very important for council. That's why we are going with the progressive design build delivery model. That is the foundation for the roadmap I'm about to walk you through. So this is the roadmap, which has 6 stages. These are 6 key stages. Stage number 1 is owner's representative procurement. This is already underway through CANU. I'll explain that shortly. Stage number 2 is a project reset. The owner's representative reviews all prior work, assess the delivery model, and return to council for a resolution before anything is committed. Stage number 3 is cost validation and AAP preparation. This is where we build the validated cost estimate and prepare the loan authorization bylaw. Stage number 4 is the alternative approval process itself. It can take 20 to 30 weeks for the electoral notice and response period. Stage number 5 is progressive design build procurement. The owner's representative leads a full trade compliant RFP to select the design builder. Stage number 6 is pre-construction and build. Collaborative design with the design builder, guaranteed maximum price development, and then council approval, then construction. There are 2 critical council decision points shown on this slide. The first is on stage 2, confirming the delivery model. We will come back to you with the owner's representative to confirm that progressive design build is good for this project, delivery model for this project. And the second is in stage 6, approving the guaranteed maximum price before construction begins. At every stage, council retains decision-making authority before the next dollar is spent. I wanted to take a moment to go through how we are engaging Colliers. We are proposing to engage Colliers project leaders as owners' representative. Because council may ask, why aren't we running our own RFP? The answer is we don't need to. Bowen Island Municipality is a member of CANU Procurement Group, a cooperative purchasing organization serving over 6,000 public sector organizations across Canada. CANU has already run an open, publicly advertised, trade-compliant RFP for project management services on our behalf. Colliers project leaders were evaluated against all the proponents using established criteria and ranked first. What this means for council is straightforward. You are not approving a sole source contract. You are authorizing BEAM's participation in a competitively awarded cooperative contract. Can you run the competition on behalf of all of us? And Colliers earn their place as the top-ranked supplier. This arrangement is fully compliant with Canadian Free Trade Agreement, the New West Partnership Trade Agreement, and CETA. BEAM has posted a notice of participation on BC Bid as required. So we have already put that posting up. Using the CANU contract also saves BEAM's team and staff 4 to 6 weeks of procurement cost and time compared to running it our own RFP. Now, I'd like to take you through stage 3 and 4, cost validation and AAP. I'd like to spend a moment on alternative approval process because it is a significant and often misunderstood part of this roadmap. Why do we need the AAP? I'm sure you guys know better than me that at $6 million, this project requires long-term borrowing under BC's community charter that borrowing requires electoral approval. The AAP is how we obtain that approval without holding a full referendum, which would be far more costly and time consuming. That's why we are proposing AAP. But before we can even start the AAP, we must have a validated cost estimate in hand. I wanted to be clear about this. This cost estimate is not optional. The loan authorization bylaw, which council gives 3 readings to, must state a specific borrowing amount. That amount must come from a rigorous, validated estimate developed by owner's representative, potentially with independent quantity surveyor review. Once the estimate is validated and the bylaw is approved at 3rd reading by the Inspector of Municipalities, we open the 30-day public notice period. Electors who support the project, they do nothing. Only those oppose the project need to submit a response form. If fewer than 10% of eligible electors oppose it, the bylaw is adopted and we proceed. If 10% or more oppose it, we would need to consider a referendum or a pause. Stage 4 is estimated around 20 to 30 weeks. That is the minimum required by the community charter, plus the administrative work around it, as you have experience with this. We are not able to compress this timeline. Stage 5 and 6 is the progressive design, build, procurement, and construction. Once AAP is complete and borrowing authority is in place, we move to procuring design builder. The OR leads the full procurement process using the RFP, managing the evaluation and negotiating the contract under BC procurement law. This takes approximately 10 to 14 weeks. At the end of stage 5, the OR brings an award recommendation to the council. Stage 6 has 2 phases. The first phase is pre-construction, which is a very collaborative period where BIM and design builder work together to develop and refine the design, validate costs, and arrive at guaranteed maximum price. The OR independently reviews and validates the GMP on BIM's behalf and brings a GMP authorization report to council. This is council's second major decision point and the green light to spend construction dollars. Once the GPM is approved, construction begins. The OR is going to be BIM's eyes and ears on site, conducting regular inspections, reviewing change orders and payments, tracking the budget, and reporting to staff monthly. Construction is estimated around 12 to 24 months, depending on scope and phasing decision during the pre-construction period. This slide is just indicative timelines. So basically, from the time that we decide to award the procurement contract, you can see we have 6 weeks for that. For the stage 2 project reset, we allocate around 7 to 8 weeks for the owner's representative to read through all the documentation and see what's going on, if we are able to use the documentation from previous work. And also the stage 3 cost estimation and AAP preparation is around 9 weeks. We allocated 9 weeks for that. And as you can see, AAP process is the bottleneck here. It's the critical path for us and the longest time that we have here before we can start the construction. It's between 28 to 30 weeks. Then progressive design build procurement, which is going to be around 12 weeks, and stage 6 is the pre-construction and build, which is going to be around 12 to 14 weeks. So key risks and council decision points. I wanted to be very transparent about the risks council should be aware of and be clear about the decisions council will need to make at each stage. The first risk and the most important one is the cost estimate accuracy. This is the most critical risk. If the bylaw borrowing ceiling is set too low, we would need to amend it and restart AAP. The OR and independent quantity surveyor must validate the estimate before we proceed. This is the only way that we can mitigate that risk. AAP opposition threshold, that's another risk. If 10% or more of eligible electorals oppose the borrowing, we face a referendum or a project pause. And in my opinion, proactive communications with public during stage 3 is the best mitigation way for that, for this risk. Prior design document IP. The OR will assess early whether Kaizen or LCM documents can be reused, which could reduce design cost in the progressive design build process. Ferry and island logistics, construction material delivery via BC Ferry creates real cost and schedule risk for us. This needs active management from the start. Council confidence. Council has declined 2 prior recommendations on this project. The progressive design build model is specifically designed to address that. It gives council validated pricing and a clear off-ramp at each stage before committing to the next. The council decisions, there are 6 in total council decision points. Step 1, award the OR contract to hire the owner's representative. Confirm the delivery model. Give 3 readings to the loan authorization bylaw. Adopt the bylaw following the AAP if the electoral threshold is met. Award design build contract and approve guaranteed maximum price to proceed to construction. Recommendations and next step. My recommendation, the first recommendation is to authorize staff to proceed with owner's representative procurement. The procurement is already underway through CANU. We are asking council to confirm that direction today. Second, confirm the budget allocation for OR. We already asked for this in our capital plan 2025 to 2030. It is in the capital plan. It is approved through the capital plan, but we would like to confirm it. Third, direct the selected OR open engagement to complete phase 1 project reset, including a delivery model option analysis, and return to council to resolution before any further procurement. And fourth, note that a validated cost estimate and loan authorization bylaw will be required before the alternative approval process for the project borrowing can begin. here I am. I like to thank Mayor and Council for the opportunity to present this project. And I want to close with this. Our Public Works team is a backbone of service delivery on Bowen Island. They maintain our roads, respond to emergencies, manage our infrastructure, and they have been doing that work from a facility that is not fit for the purpose. This project is about giving them what they need and giving the community the reliability and service delivery it deserves. The approach we are recommending, progressive design build with an owner's representative through a Canoe awarded contract, is designed specifically to give council cost certainty, transparency, and control. You will not be asked to spend construction dollars without a guaranteed maximum price in front of you. With that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Kasari, for a very thorough report. Really appreciate that. And it's clear there's a lot of work went into it, and but it lays it out really well. I'll look to council for any questions before I ask my own.
Thank you, Chief.
I'll start with Councillor Getty.
The alternative approval process, that's basically a way of avoiding a referendum, which normally is considered to be very expensive and time consuming. But we have a municipal election on October the 17th. So that would cut out the costs. And that would give us roughly 20 weeks, which is your first three, whatever you call them, sorry.
So
key
indicate-
stages,
Mhm.
which could possibly be completed in 20 weeks between now and then. So rather than, would that save us the 28 to 30 weeks that are calculated here as part of the AAP process if we had a referendum?
Through the chair, I defer that question to our corporate officer.
Thank you. Yes. So the estimated AAP timeline is only slightly less than a referendum timeline. So once 3 readings of a bylaw take place, you have to hold a referendum. I believe it's within 80 days. And
So then we would have to have 3 readings of the bylaw before the election, sometime before the election.
And then to hold a referendum at the same time as an election, that's something council would have to decide if it's in the best interest of the project, and then the election to
Have to do
proceed
all of
with.
the information and public consultation and things before that, okay.
That's right.
But that would, if we could do it at the same time that we're organizing municipal election, then that would save us potentially the 28 to 30 weeks that's on this timeline.
It could potentially save some time. However, the AAP process itself is really administratively light. There's almost no cost. There's advertising cost and the cost of printing forms. So adding a referendum to an election would increase the cost to hold that election as well. Just including, ballots and counting time and then additional communication regarding the referendum.
Okay.
Councillor Morris.
Councillor Morris?
Okay, so the recommendation that's before us is that we just receive the presentation for information. So I'm a little curious about that, and then with all the detail we got. So it's just for information, and you also, I think, noted that 185,000 or thereabouts was in the budget to hire the owner's representative. So really, that would be the first step. Now, I'm not sure if Collier's I'm not quite sure where Colliers comes into this, but anyhow, I don't think for this point, we're running behind time anyhow. So where did the $6 million come from? If you don't have any designs or anything?
Through the chair. So this $6 million was estimated based on the previous design that
The
was.
Kasan one?
That's correct. That plus the escalation for the,
Okay, you've answered my question with the Kasan. So to me, the Kasan was, I don't know why we can't do something simpler, like a nice wood building that's built by our contractors here on the island for the work yard, offices, change rooms, washrooms and everything, and then use insulated prefab metal buildings for everything else. So anyhow, I'm just throwing that out as a comment. And then my last one is, an owner's representative is going to have to administer what's planned. So the plan is that he would look after getting built the Kasan design.
through the chair, it's not going to, they are not going to go through that design. So this is the model that we are right now proposing, is that we don't even know if we can use those designs. We have to go and check all the drawings, and I myself, I haven't had the chance to go through all of it. It's just 50%. From 50% to 100% design is a long way. So we cannot possibly go and use that and start building the building. This is going to be a design build process, which means that we are going to look into what we have and also look into alternatives. You are right. Maybe we don't need to build a building like that, and maybe we can even use the prefabricated building. There are many options out there, but we need to first hire owner's representative to look into what we have and decide about the next options. And maybe when we hire them, we come back to council with options. First, we have to clean up what we have. We have to reset where we are at. We don't even know what was produced by Liberty Management contract, right? Everything needs to be reset, everything needs to be reviewed, then we'll come to the council with options. And one of the options that I'm thinking is prefabricated building, or what you mentioned can be a good option. This $6 million that I put, this is just an estimate. Again, you are not committing to any numbers right now. The maximum guaranteed price will come to council. And then at that time, you do have time to make that decision if this is a right number for the Bowen Island municipality.
So on that note, unless anybody else has got questions, I'll move the recommendation that council receive the presentation roadmap for the Public Works Service Yard Upgrade Project for information.
Just before we get to that motion,
I have a
I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Fast, and then I have the question as well. And then I'll come back to Councillor Morris.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions because I am wondering if progressive design build, in quotations, is that a technical term, or does it just mean a design build process that goes through those stages that you've got it laid out? Or can you define progressive design build?
Through the chair, this is a very good question, Councillor Fast. I was planning to have a presentation about different delivery model for projects, but I thought this is too much for this afternoon. Yeah, so that's a progressive design build is a delivery model where the municipalities, they are hiring design builder together rather than having a designer to do the design that then go to the bid and then go to the construction. what we are doing, we are asking them to find a designer, and the builder and designers are gonna work as a team rather than they are pointing fingers at each other when things go wrong. When they are one team, they look into the constructability of the design that the designer is proposing at very first stage before we have the guaranteed maximum price. So that's why it's very collaborative, and council have the ability to approve the dollar amount with having the contractors as part of the design build team.
Team. I like that word team. Thank you. And I think this is an important, essential project. It has to do with sustainability of the equipment that we're leaving out in the rain, the staff, the safety, the projects that are so expensive. And I just think it's an important project. I really like the process that you've laid out here. It gives me a feeling that I can see when council can have input and what is going to be collected along the way. And I like that teamwork, collaborative approach. So I'll be voting in favor of receiving it, but it sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Getty?
The recommendation on the agenda is simply to receive the presentation for information, but the recommendations in your report include authorize staff to proceed with the OR procurement. So is that something that you need to have us vote on as well?
I can address that, Councillor Getty. So we do have allocation in the budget for up to $250,000 to be spent this year on this preliminary piece of the work. Given that we have authorization in the budget, staff will go forward, work on procurement of the owner's representative. And when the final contract comes, given that it'll be over $50,000, that will come to council to authorize that we execute that contract.
Okay. So we don't need anything more than just receive it for information?
No,
Okay,
we
thank
just want to kind of
Yep.
front load it. What you can expect to see coming forward in the next few weeks will be a contract with an owner's representative. And Director Kozari has also just provided some additional information around the procurement process, also to just make council aware of this buying opportunity through this cooperative group that makes things quite efficient for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Is there any other questions from council? Seeing none, I will ask my own, and it's part comment, part question. As somebody who has worked in unideal circumstances for over 10 years without sufficient resources, I can understand why this is a challenge for our public works staff. Like, this is clearly something that's unworkable. I remember when this item first came to us back at the beginning of the term, and the working conditions were just appalling, not only on a safety level, but also on just the conditions the staff had to work in. And so I'm glad to see this come back as something that we can move on. My question was just about GMP, and I think you said that was guaranteed maximum price. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I will turn it over to Councillor Morse for the motion.
I would move that council receive the presentation roadmap for the Public Works Service Yard Upgrade Project for information.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Nay. Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Kozari. And I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of the next item.
Next, we have 8.3, Bowen Island Municipality School District 45 Joint Use Agreement. Jillian Drake, Manager of Recreation and Community Services.
I'd like to move the recommendation as written.
Sorry, I missed that, Councillor. Sorry, Mayor Leonard.
I'll move the recommendation as written.
Okay. In that case, I will look for a seconder.
Second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Getty. Is there any discussion or questions on this item? Counselor Morris?
I was looking at this joint use agreement in comparison to the previous one, and I'm not necessarily unhappy with what's in the agreement, but I am unhappy with the loss of the use of the words community school throughout it. So I'm just hoping that, and there's a little bit of confusion with the parking lot comments, but that's not necessarily serious. I think it could be worked out between them afterwards.
And regarding the loss of community school, I would look to staff, is that just a change because West Bank School District, with the loss of the community school liaison position, are they no longer considering BIX a community school?
You're misreading my question. It's just the use of the words community school
Oh.
in the agreement.
Okay,
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we're still considered a community school by the school district.
and that's what, Counselor Morris, that's what I was asking as well. Are we still considered or no longer, is it still considered or not considered a community school?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. School District 45 still considers Bowen Island Community School a community school. So I feel that it may have been more of omission by mistake rather than purposeful, if that language was lifted from the agreement.
Okay, thank you. And seeing no amendments being proposed, I will call the question if there's no further discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay.
Oops.
Wait,
We're getting punchy.
That's 2 votes.
sorry, just,
Aye.
Aye.
okay. So there is, I will try that again. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 All opposed, please raise your hand, say nay. Hearing no opposition, carries unanimously. Again, I will look to the corporate officer for the next item.
And next we have 11.1, update to council on Islands Trust business.
Okay, and I will turn it over to Trustee Fast and Trustee Getty, starting with Trustee Getty.
We have a new committee on the trust, and it's the CAO Evaluation Process Committee. Met for the first time this morning, and to set up the formalities of having a regular annual update and formal assessment of the CAO. So it was the chairs of all of the other committees, standing committees, and lucky me, I got elected to be chair of the new CAO EPC. So yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. I hadn't read the agenda for about a week, and suddenly I'm chair and running the meeting, but it's fairly straightforward, good terms of reference, and it's something that we're hiring a consultant for, I think it was $15,000 to do the 360 evaluation and have a report for council. It's not going to be ready until the next council, but we're going to have it organized in terms of what the measurement parameters are, and have that all completed before the next council. So probably December, when their first meeting. So there's a timeline so that the CEO and council get into a discussion, typically, I think this summer, just before the summer break.
And if I can pick up from there?
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Trustee Getty. I also am part of that committee because I'm a chair of a committee. And thank you, Judy, for stepping up to be, when you were nominated. It's an interesting policy that we put in place at the trust. It sets out the process for an annual evaluation of the CAO performance. And if anybody wants to look at it, it's in the June 2025 Trust Council agenda. And it's something I think that's going to be really useful. I think the cycle starts like this year in May. I think usually we're supposed to start in April, and that's laid out in the policy. I can just flag a couple of more things. The committee of the whole last week on Wednesday, that's where we heard what was heard from the trust policy statement, most recent public input and organization input. And I would just suggest that elected folks here might like to look at it in terms of what the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs said, their input to the draft trust policy statement, and also the Ministry of Agriculture had some really good input there that relates to our some of the projects that have been coming before us, the rezonings and things that we've been looking at today. And on Wednesday, day after tomorrow, is Financial Planning Committee. So that's, we'll also receive the audit. It's a clean audit, I'm told, and the agenda will be posted tomorrow morning, I think, if anybody wants to look at that agenda. And that's all I was going to report for now.
Sorry. Full
Thank you.
council meeting in June. 16 to 18 coming up.
Thank you, Councillors Vast and Getty. And we move on to question period, which is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about any of the items discussed today. Do we have any questioners?
We do. In the audience, we have Margaret Underhill.
Excellent. The chair, I'd like to acknowledge Margaret Underhill to come forward with their question.
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. I just wanted to request clarification on one item to do with the decision to proceed with the 620 Laura Road rezoning application, specifically information that was in Planner Martin's report. We made clear in our communications with Rob Purdy that absolutely key to our acceptance was restricting the size of the cidery to an as-is basis. And Rob Purdy, in his communications with us and in his public comments today, agreed with that. Planner Martin's report still refers to it, the restrictions as per the TUP. And the TUP's restrictions are roughly twice the size of the picnic area and the retail space that currently exists. So we need clarification on this because as far as we're concerned, the applicant and the neighbors have an understanding of this. But if the information that goes out in the draft bylaw is incorrect, then it will shoot what we've managed to achieve so far in the foot. So I don't know if the rest of council has any misconceptions on this point, but if that could be clarified, it would be most appreciated.
I will take that. My understanding is, as you describe, that it's the current size, not the size as laid out in the TUP, but I will defer this to staff to respond. Is there a possibility of getting Planner Martin to clarify this either within the meeting or afterwards?
I can help with that. Planner Martin is watching on YouTube, so he has a response, and his report was written before the letter was received. So he's confirming, yes, the bylaw would restrict, would still have those, sorry, would restrict the current arrangement.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Ms. Underhill.
And we have a question from Frank de Ferrier.
All right, Madam Mann.
I want to congratulate you for the improvement of the room. I have been able to hear properly. The microphone is wonderful. Also, the picture is the proper picture. It's the right is on the right is on the right, and what's on the left is on the left. There's only one problem that I have noticed, and that is probably for Sophie. I think there's a legal position or something. You are not supposed to see the person who's speaking like me. And the reason is because a long, long time ago, I was videotagged personally during my communication to council. And I was brought to, I was supposed to go to court because they had taken me directly. So at some time in the past, you did a very good job. You stopped the view from videotaping from here. You could see my back, but you're not supposed to see me in the back. I mean, as a public or whatever. I think that's all. It's a small problem. It's a problem that has to be resolved. But wonderful, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do apologize in advance for not always speaking directly into the mic. Still getting used to this, but we'll continue to do better on that one.
I move adjournment.
Beat me to the request, Councillor Morse. Lovely. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposition, carried unanimously. Shall we take a 5-minute break before closed? We
And
shall.
so we come back on the same Zoom link?
Yes.
We will return